In this podcast, one of the stories that I cover are the recent comments made by Congressman Tim Burchett. He made statements saying something along the lines of, if the American people knew what was happening with the ET UFO phenomenon, that we would become unglued, indicating that it's so terrible we wouldn't be able to handle it. It also promotes a line of helplessness. The more I thought about this podcast after I recorded it, the more I felt that I needed to do this updated introduction to it. We need to stop letting people decide what we can handle. We need to stop letting people tell us it's so bad we can't tell you. We need to see evidence. How can we possibly solve a problem if we're not given all the variables? Let us decide for ourselves, and maybe we can rise to the occasion. We need to be cautious of the information that's coming our way, and this may be a big piece of it. In this podcast, I'll break down more elements that are at play right now and the information that is coming at us, and why it's important to be mindful of what type of information we consume and how we process it.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong in the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there.
Reality is not what it seems. We are living in a time period of change right now. We are watching technology and our civilization, I'd say, evolve and devolve simultaneously. The process of change is not an easy one. We're watching old systems be torn away as new ones are put into place. And as we're watching this happen, we're being fed a narrative or several narratives, confusing and conflicting narratives, which will ultimately lead us to a particular lens or focal point in which to interpret this new system and this new reality that we're stepping ourselves into. AI is such a powerful tool right now. I'm speaking personally for myself, and I'm assuming most of us don't realize just how efficient and effective and fast this is. I'm going to share in a moment something that I wrote years ago in Food for the Archons that has now come true. I've noticed on my social media feeds a few things. If I look at, first of all, I'll get maybe one or two stories from my friends, and then it's all groups and companies and reels and things that have nothing to do with the people I originally signed up to Facebook to connect with. It's everybody's company and everybody's podcast and everybody's whatever. Very little of the people I actually want to see what they're posting and what's going on with their lives. I noticed that with certain narratives that are being pushed everywhere, if I linger on that story for more than half a second as I'm thumbing through it, then the next, every other one, 10 scrolls down, is that a different version of the same story, or the same story being reported through different platforms, through different feeds. For example, today I learned that there's something happening with psychedelic research. Trump and Joe Rogan made this announcement that they're trying to make it more easily accessible for veterans and PTSD, which is great. I looked at it, and then everything in my feed, that story must have appeared 15 to 20 times in my feed. I've noticed as a veteran, I've been reaching out through not Facebook, but through Google. I've been querying certain things. I'm not doing research. I'm trying to reach out to, various organizations tied to the VA and veteran services and things. And all of a sudden, I've got 5 or 6 different veterans, I'll put groups in air quotes, on Facebook that keep showing up on my page. So obviously, and we know this, Facebook and Google are in communication with the things that I'm searching for and the things that I'm looking at, and it's feeding me that information now. It's creating that echo chamber for me now, and it's getting annoying. And I suspect some of these, and also ADHD is one that keeps showing up now on my Facebook feed as well. But these things, I'm noticing every couple days, they're putting the same posts up. And the posts aren't inflammatory. Sometimes they'll have these tactics where it's like, they'll say something that's obviously wrong, or they'll ask a question where the answer for people who are like with ADHD, like, do you ever have this symptom of, overthinking things? Is that normal for ADHD? Like, obviously, yes. Things that are going to entice you to want to jump on and comment and, boost the algorithm. I also noticed yesterday I had a conversation with somebody about something in particular. I'm not going to discuss on the show. And within an hour, that was appearing on my Facebook feed. I don't think that Facebook was listening to me. I know that happens sometimes. But I think something else that happens is when our phones are in close proximity to people for a long enough amount of time, those phones communicate, and we see the things that they were looking at within the time frame that we were around them, and it thinks, oh, let's share this information with this person as well, because there's a chance that that's what they're interested in, that's what they were talking about. So I think there's a whole range of signaling and communication and metadata that's being exchanged that we're not fully aware of. And that's just the things, the tangible stuff. When we start getting into now these fake news stories that are being crafted, it's very hard to determine what's real. And one of the things I want to touch on shortly is this pending release of the UFO files. Now, today being April 18th, 2026, Trump just announced that any day now they're going to release some of these files. We really need to be careful with the story that's going to come out. Me, as much as many of you, I want the story, I want the data, I want the evidence, I want it. I feel like I'm ready for it. We just had a congressman, I'll get to who they were in a little bit, saying inflammatory things like, I just saw the secret files and American people would become unglued if they knew what was really happening, basically saying this is something so terrifying. We had another congressman say there's an alien-human hybrid breeding program that's been going on. I'm going to pull that quote up as well and talk about that. First of all, that frustrates me. And I've expressed this opinion before. I'm so glad that these people get access to look at these things. But when you come out and you make an inflammatory statement like that, and then you can't share anything, I feel like you're just creating more chaos. Don't make those extraordinary claims if you're not able to back them up and show us. Because now people are going to start speculating. People are going to start wondering. And then it's never going to come out. Maybe you have good intentions, but I don't think there's any real value in something like that other than to spread fear and anxiety. It's so bad, but I can't tell you about it. Then don't tell me about it. I listened to the recent Bob Lazar interview on the Joe Rogan podcast. And one of the things that Bob said during that interview was, he said, I'm starting to think, and it's not a direct quote, but he basically said, I'm starting to think I made the wrong choice. And when he explained that, he said, it's obvious to me that by the time I got there, this was nothing new to the people, to the long-term participants on this project. Because with scientific study, everything should have been well-disciplined, a clean room, managing the environment. And he says it wasn't. It was just an empty airplane hangar. They were so casual and comfortable with a lot of this stuff. It's obvious that this had been they've had this technology for a long time that they've been trying to back engineer or to work on. And his logic on that was, these people have been working on this for a very long time and nobody has really come out with the story. Why is that? He said, maybe it's because the story is so bad. Maybe it's because what the truth is so terrible. There's no value in sharing it. Bob questions, he reminds me of Bill Cooper in the sense that he even said, for all he knows, the things that he was shown were fake. Meaning, fake's not the right word. He was shown those things with the objective of him coming out and telling the story that he told. It's possible Bob Lazar was manipulated into sharing this narrative. Why would they do that? Bill Cooper, who, if you don't know who he is, go back and take a look at who Bill Cooper is. Bill Cooper is one that talked about Project Bluebeam and the fake alien invasion, but he used to, in his earlier days, was doing a lot talking about we'll call it the Illuminati, the occult, the cabal, the secret governance of the planet and all that stuff. But he also talked about when he was in Vietnam, or during that era when he was in the military, he was shown, he had access to files that were basically UFO files. And then he talked about this in his book, Behold a Pale Horse. He gets into it as well. This extraterrestrial being that had been captured or recovered, and there's a whole backstory on that. And at one point on his Hour of the Time podcast, which you can find, back then it was a radio show, which you can find on YouTube, he did talk about the possibility. He says, I can't be sure that the information I'm sharing is real. It's possible that was intentionally planted in front of me as a deception, so I would go out and tell you all of these things. This has been such a big secret. We know with accounts like the stories behind Richard Doty, there's been strong disinformation campaigns surrounding UAPs and UFO technology. How do we know this isn't all a big charade, all a big distraction from something much bigger? And what that much bigger thing is, I don't know. What bothers me as an analyst, as an investigator, what bothers me the most, not the most, but raises a red flag, more and more we do hear the term non-human intelligence, but we're also hearing the term alien and interdimensional being. I think it's important for us to be mindful of whatever comes out. And I'm not expecting, I will be surprised if something significant comes out in the near future. But whatever comes out, if something is labeled as alien or as interdimensional, we need to understand, we need to ask, how did you get to that conclusion? Just because the technology is so advanced, just because there's a humanoid being that is not human, doesn't mean it's alien. It does not mean it's interdimensional. It does not mean it's not from the planet Earth. And we need to hold space for that possibility. I'm afraid of being sold another narrative. I'm afraid this storyline is going to be used to drive us in a particular direction of thought, which is away from the truth, which is away from what's real. I'm afraid that whatever is sold to us is going to seem incredibly fantastic. I am of the belief, based on the things that I've looked at, and I'll reference as an easy one the work of Graham Hancock and Fingerprints of the Gods and Magicians of the Gods, sites like Göbekli Tepe. There was an ancient civilization that was highly technologically advanced. And who knows, maybe I'm spinning another narrative that's not true either. But that's what I think based on the things I've looked at. Michael Cremo's book, Forbidden Archaeology. All of these pieces of evidence that are uncovered that don't fit the narrative. We're making these conclusions that these things are all alien. But what if they're from here? What if what's being exposed is the control grid or elements of it that has been here the entire time? Whitley Strieber's work has talked for decades about the abduction phenomenon. Something is happening. I don't know what it is. What's interesting is in some of the studies, some of the psychedelic studies, people have encountered these gray beings. Is this tied to an altered state of consciousness? Is this tied to an altered perception of reality? As David Icke talks about, is this just a different frequency of our reality that they operate within? Does that make them alien? Is it possible we are just walking around in this reality, blind and deaf to a greater system around us? I fear that as our technology improves, it's getting harder and harder to distinguish fact from fiction. A perfect example, a few weeks ago now, we had the story of the pilot who was rescued by the United States military over Iran. And I remember seeing a picture of the pilot sitting in the back of a helicopter smiling with a bunch of airmen on the crew around him as he's being rescued. And my first thought was, that's weird that these guys are a special operations unit and you can see their faces. I thought that was odd. And then, because my feed keeps becoming an echo chamber, I saw that same picture a few days later. But this time there was an American flag in the guy's lap. Same picture. And I believe it later came out that that entire image was AI generated. So then you have to ask yourself, did a pilot really go down? Did he really get rescued? Are we really there? Is this thing in Iran really happening? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But there's so much trickery happening right now. It's really hard to distinguish fact from fiction. I want to share something that I wrote years ago that I think is relevant today and happening now. It's from my book, Food for the Archons. So in Food for the Archons, I have a chapter called AI. And I write that Elon Musk of SpaceX and Tesla Motors has been very outspoken about the dangers of artificial intelligence. As reported by the Washington Post in July of 2017 when speaking at a National Governors Association summer meeting in Providence, Rhode Island, Musk warned that AI posed a fundamental risk to human civilization. Musk explained that once there is awareness, people will be extremely afraid, as they should be. AI is a fundamental risk to the future of human civilization in a way that car accidents, airplane crashes, faulty drugs, or bad food were not. They were harmful to a set of individuals in society, but they were not harmful to individuals as a whole. Musk went on to explain that AI could start a war by doing fake news and spoofing email accounts and fake press releases, and just by manipulating information, or indeed, as some companies already claim they can do, by getting people to say anything that the machine wants. We are a nation divided. We are a world divided right now. And I've noticed the instant response on my algorithm when I look at one story, or I post one thing, or I search for something on a completely different platform. All of that metadata is in communication. It's being run through algorithms and AI, and then regurgitating stories back to me. Back to the book here, I write, one only has to look to the U.S. presidential election of 2016 to see the havoc caused by a relentless fake news campaign. It caused massive confusion, controversy, and protests throughout the United States. These stories, however, were crafted by human minds and limited by human potential. Imagine the damage that could be caused if the mind of an advanced AI created fake news with targeted objectives. According to the article published by MIT Technology Review titled Fake News 2.0, Personalized, Optimized, and Even Harder to Stop, Sean Gorley, the CEO and founder of Primer, a data mining company for U.S. intelligence agencies, warns that AI will soon have the ability to craft its own fake news stories tailored to each individual consumer. I want to highlight that. Tailored to each individual consumer, to the user, to you. The article explains that when speaking to an audience at MTech Digital, Gorley stated the automation of the generation of fake news is going to make it very effective. According to the article, Gorley continued to explain that technologies such as primers could easily be used to generate convincing fake stories automatically. He said, and that could mean fake reports tailored to an individual's interests and sympathies and carefully tested before being released to maximize their impact. I can generate 1 million stories, see which ones get the most traction, double down on those. Given the amount of metadata collected by these data mining agencies on every single internet user, an AI would have access and algorithms to identify topics that could be utilized to manipulate a population of people. Things like search habits, link clicks, shares, likes, comments, check-ins, all paint a digital picture of our wants, desires, and fears. Such data in the wrong hands could be a powerful weapon against us if we don't become smart, defensive consumers of our technology. Lastly, Gorley states that all we've seen at the moment is primitive, and it's had a profound impact, and more is coming. I published this book. When did this book get published? In 2019, this book came out. In 2019, that was right before COVID. I think it was summer of 2019 when I published this. Man, I had no idea. I wrote that. I expanded on that in the book. I understood the concepts behind it, but now we're in it. We are living it right now. It's so fast and it's overwhelming, and it does know what things are going to catch your interest and what's going to be really hard to look away from and to not click on. I just saw a post on Twitter, and I'll overlay it. On X. I will overlay it so you can see it as well. David Icke shared it initially. He said, the hive mind electromagnetic field. See what I mean? And he was posting an account from someone called X Freeze. And they wrote, Starlink is becoming the most important nervous system of our planet. With Starlink, you basically end all dead zones and have full, reliable communications from anywhere on Earth. If you can see the sky, you can communicate. Almost every single day, companies around the world are partnering with Starlink to expand services and their users. It's a system where you can get connected with anyone, making Starlink the most reliable network on Earth. And I'll have the graphic up as well, but I'm going to hold my phone up for now in case I can't do it. And that's just an image of the Earth with the Starlink logo and a grid surrounding it. It's concerning to me. It's an artificial nervous system. In 2018, I did a podcast with Edward Reardon. It was our infamous, we call it now the cue ball sessions. He talked about something like this. And the ultimate end piece of that is the instantaneous changing of consciousness of everyone on the planet. I've explored it a great deal in my Hive series. When you talk to people, have you noticed Agent Smith coming out? And when I say that, I mean, and I covered this extensively in another podcast, but I think it's relevant. A lot of us are regurgitating things. I know I'm being hypocritical now because I'm repeating things I've talked about, but this feels different. I find myself starved for novelty, and this is a side effect of being neurodivergent, ADHD. We thrive on novelty because of the dopamine and all that stuff. But I find that most of the podcasts I'm listening to, the news that I occasionally consume, it's all really telling the same story. I feel like it's wash, rinse, repeat, say the same thing. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. But is anybody really telling us anything new? Honestly, the congressmen who are saying if you knew what I just saw in the skiff about aliens, American people would come unglued. Or the other congressman who came out and said there's an alien-human hybrid breeding program. That's stuff people have speculated about for a while, but where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Where's the new stuff? Those are just inflammatory statements. It's one of the reasons why I like remote viewing, because it's raw. It's direct experience, whether it's wherever it's coming from. It's getting harder and harder to trust, to find sources that you can trust as being authentic. So what's really happening? I don't know. I worry about the potential for manipulation coming. As a remote viewer, as an author, for me the line gets blurred sometimes between reality. I live in that liminal space. And I've noticed something that is curious to me as a writer and understanding remote viewing and how we can tap into a signal line. So my Hive series was inspired by that cue ball interview I did with Edward back in 2018, and I just published last summer book 3. I got it. The whole series is done and out. And in that series, in book 3, it's called The Hive Origins, and as I was publishing it, I was very into the 3-Eye Atlas project, which felt significant to me because of all the attention and lore that came around that. And I thought, okay, maybe because I was a remote viewer on that in 2 different capacities, I was supporting projects on that, 2 different projects, maybe I was tapping into that as the writer, because I wrote the story and then I did the projects. But I'm wondering if there's more to it. I want to read a few excerpts from my book. So this is from the Hive 3, and it says, NASA detects anomalous objects in near-Earth orbit. NASA scientists have confirmed the identification of several near-Earth objects, or NEOs, earlier today. Scientists stated that several hundred objects were spotted within a few hundred miles of Earth and are expected to make an impact later this afternoon. It is unknown where the objects came from, Mike Lakowitz of NASA advised earlier, but it is highly likely that there were 2 previously undiscovered NEOs that collided, creating the large debris field we discovered today. Although there are many, we do not need to panic. These objects should burn up and break into smaller bits as they enter the atmosphere and are most likely ice-heavy. It should make for a beautiful display of shooting stars in the night sky over the next few nights in areas all over the world. More to come on this developing story. Fast forward a few chapters, and again, this is a work of science fiction. I'm going to tie it together. We have breaking news just into Triple N. Moments ago, early impact of what appears to be the first meteor fragment. Pamela's voice was monotone and serious, catching the attention of the millions of viewers on the other side of the camera. That's right, Pamela, Clark continued seamlessly. At approximately 11:05 a.m. Eastern Time, a fragmented piece of the NEOs impacted a field in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. Emergency crews are responding, have quarantined the area, and are responding in full hazmat gear. From what our sources are telling us, the hazmat is just a precautionary measure, and there is nothing to worry about. We'll continue to follow up on this story closely as it develops. All right, why am I sharing that? Because I just want to senselessly promote my book? No, I want to tie it into something. And it's the timing of everything. I just released this book less than a year ago. And I'm going to go to an article from Unknown Country. March 20, and it's titled March 2026 has seen an unexplained spike in fireball sightings. Late March of this year saw an uncanny number of fireball reports with sightings in California, Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio occurring between the 17th and the 23rd, including one that produced a meteorite that damaged a house in Texas on the 21st. This sudden increase in sightings of the fiery meteors is occurring despite no major meteor showers being due this time of year. And the pattern of their sightings suggests that this is not a case of reporting bias, where a normal number of events would appear to be multiplied due to a greater number of reports, but it instead appears to be a genuine increase in fireball activity. The sudden spike in fireball occurrences was recorded by the American Meteor Society, while 1,587 and 1,425 reports were logged in January and February, respectively. This number shot up to 2,369 by March 27th, a nearly 60% increase over the previous month. Fireball sightings were also reported earlier in the month in France on March 8th and Germany on March 11th, and Canada's west coast on the 3rd. The fireball that streaked over Texas on March 21st was bright enough to be seen in the late afternoon sky, estimated to have been 1 ton in mass when it entered the atmosphere. The flaming meteor was traveling fast enough to generate a sonic boom and exploded with the force of 26 tons of TNT. The explosion was bright enough to be registered by lightning detection sensors on NOAA's GOES satellites, and scattered debris across the community of Bammel, an urban area in the north of Houston, with one cantaloupe-sized fragment being recovered from the bedroom of one house after crashing through the dwelling's roof. While it's easy to assume that we're experiencing larger than usual number of fireball occurrences, it remains to be seen as to whether the Earth is being hit by more debris than usual, or if there are more reports coming in for an otherwise typical number of incidents. However, a higher number of meteorites are being recovered after striking the ground than usual, suggesting that there are indeed more fireballs streaking across the sky than normal. All right, I'll have the link. The article continues. You can check that out at unknowncountry.com. Why am I pointing that out? I mean, if you can see the cover to my book, there's meteors in the background of it, right? I'm not saying that my book is predicting the future. That wasn't my intention when I was writing it. But if you go back to last summer, I think August, September timeframe, as the book was coming out, the synchronicities surrounding my book and things in the world around me were scary, were really scary. Are these meteors coming down an indicator of something? Are they connected to the overall thesis of my book? Or am I just making connections because I'm trying to put myself in a story that I don't belong in? I'm open to that possibility as well. But I do think that the connection is noteworthy, and especially if you follow the progression of the trilogy and my goal of the series. I don't know what comes next. I do think that we are going to see something with these UAP files that come out, and I just need us to be cautious of the narrative that they're trying to spin, and we need to search and seek our own answers. We need to let our intuition guide us, which means once they give you the story, sometimes it's better not to just jump in and dig. It may be better to step out and search your feelings and just reflect on it before it keeps getting repeated from many different angles, telling you the same thing. That's not necessarily proof. It's just good storytelling. Speaking of storytelling, here we go. You can find this on many different sites, but I have this up on, looks like MSN.com. Gates claims alien human breeding program exists. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz says a U.S. Army whistleblower briefed him on a secret alien-human hybrid breeding programs meant for intergalactic communication. He has admitted he has not verified the claims, which include alleged abductions from war zones and migrant caravans. The remarks come amid heightened political and public interest in UFOs, with critics online ridiculing the unproven allegations. As a former congressman, that's a pretty big statement to make, saying that you have a whistleblower who hasn't been vetted. It's one thing if I was to pull somebody on here and have that conversation, but I'm also very cautious when I put information out to declare my what I think is the level of reliability of a source. Coming from the guy that just quoted fiction, right? Or science fiction. I don't know what to think of this. What is interesting is that in many of the abduction accounts going back, several decades, they have talked about people having semen and eggs taken. There have been many accounts of women, mothers, losing a pregnancy and then a short time later being in an abduction scenario and being shown a child that didn't look fully human. Jacques Vallée and then Graham Hancock, quoting Jacques Vallée, talked about the fairy babe and how this goes back centuries, these accounts. It's just slightly evolved. And that is what I think is interesting. The old accounts of flying ships, the Vimanas, and now we're moving into these modern UFOs, but at the bare bones, the basic gestalts, the stories are very similar. But I think consciousness is a piece, or our awareness, or our perception, or our ability to perceive. And I think that's somehow connected to this. How much of our reality is already being manipulated that we're just incapable of perceiving right now? That there might be a mechanism that we cannot grasp yet. And then maybe we're just not capable of that. Okay, here's one more. This article came out the next day, April 2nd, 2026. This is from people.com. And again, I'm not looking for any specific media outlet. This story is covered in multiple spots. I just want to give you the highlights of it. Congressman claims if Americans saw alien reports he was shown, this country would have come unglued. You'd be up at night. Tennessee Representative Tim Burchett, who did not elaborate on the alleged briefings he received, has pushed for the government to share what it knows about UFOs during his time in Congress. He claimed he was briefed on outer space activity that would have set the Earth on fire if publicly revealed. This country would have come unglued, I think, he added, without providing specifics. Burchett has pushed for the government to reveal what it knows about UFOs in outer space during his time in Congress. It's very cryptic. It's very inflammatory. What are we supposed to do with that? I think it's if he's trying to get the information out there, I respect that he's trying to do that. Let's circle back to Bob Lazar, though. Is there a reason why the story hasn't come out? What if it is something that's really bad? I don't want to start planting those seeds, but we have to wonder. What if when I wrote Food for the Archons, I was hopeless. I had just watched my father die. He was my hero. He was invincible. And there was nothing I could do to help him. Nothing. And I watched the medical system fail him. His doctors lied to us, and I watched them cover their tracks afterwards. I couldn't even get his primary physician to call me in the final week of his life because we wanted to have a simple blood test done. So I had a lot of frustration. I was hopeless. I started having during his death, these experiences beyond the five senses, which led me to write the book. My perception was very dark. I think there's value in the statement, when you're going through hell, keep going. I kept going. It was dark. It lasted a long time. Through that, I found Reiki. Through that, I found remote viewing. Through that, I found hope. I found a tool that gives us a glimpse, gives us a chance to better understand ourselves and the world around us. And I think we need to lean on that and expand it. what else can we do with it? It's a fine balance. We don't want to get lost in strictly esoteric information. That is a dangerous game. But we can't rely on anything that's coming through our phones or our media outlets, even our podcasts and our trusted favorite speakers. Myself included. I have my opinions, I have my bias, some of which I'm probably not even aware of. I do my best. But my show should be one among many, in addition to your own practice of meditation or intuition, writing, journaling, reflecting, disconnecting. I don't have the answers, but I do feel that in the very near future, we're going to be hit with information that is paradigm shifting, potentially catastrophic. That's my opinion, and I know I'm not the only one that holds that opinion. So I could also just be regurgitating and now assimilating a storyline that's been inserted into our timeline. I just question everything. And maybe it's better not to. Maybe it's better to just pick a story and stick with it and you feel safe in that bubble. And I don't mean that facetiously. I can't do that. You know, never stop questioning, right? Keep an open mind and let your intuition be your guide. That's what I always say. It's the synchronicities that get me. And it's the subtle questions that come up and the inconsistencies and the credibility of the people who are telling us these things and the things that don't make sense, like the infamous files, what's being done with them, the fact that they potentially confirm some of the darkest things out there and yet nothing's being done. I'd like to know, what psychological impact is that having on us beyond the gaslighting and the trauma that it's creating, the lack of trust that it's building? Chase Hughes, he's a, for lack of a better term, a behavior guy. I've talked about him before. I can't remember his actual title. He was talking about one way to manipulate people is you tell two different seemingly unrelated things and let other people make the connection between those things. So you never link those things being together. And then they start to believe the narrative. We have this advanced technology. And we're going into space. And I wonder if there's aliens. And now we're going to connect them together. I wonder if aliens is the false trail and it's something else. I think we're being pulled away from our own consciousness. And I think with AI and all of these signals, it's going to mimic things that feel like telepathic communication. And I have been saying pretty much since I started doing this show, our greatest defense is our own intuition. Meditate daily. Start to understand how psychic information comes in. Because I suspect it feels different from technological information. When you start recognizing signal line, what it feels like, and what that experience is like. I suspect, I hope, it's different from technology. Now, it might not be. It might be one and the same. But for now, I have to hope that's one of our greatest defenses as we're trying to access the truth. It's a lot to think about, and I wish I had more concrete answers. And I'm really just sitting here ruminating on all the doubts that I have on everything that is happening around us in the world. So I think it's important. I think it's important right now, and it's hard to do, to take some time and focus on some positive things. If we really are conscious creators, if we really can influence, then we need to have more of that in our lives. You know, I listened to a podcast that was uplifting the other day, and it really affected my whole morning because I wasn't thinking of war and scary and dark. We have to find a balance, and we have to let that. I'm not saying just love and light everybody to death. I don't think that works either. I think we're lying to ourselves when we do that. But I think we need to create positive experiences as often as we can and hold on to those and remember those. Remember why that's important. Remember what it feels like to be human and have those loving, wonderful experiences. Take time for those. Do something you love and then expand that energy. That's where I'm going to leave you, my friends. I appreciate all of you. I thank you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say, and I welcome your feedback. Do you think we're moving towards an even bigger deception? Do you think AI is as dangerous as I'm pointing it out to be? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So, remember, never stop questioning, keep an open mind, and let your intuition be your guide. Thank you.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend, be water, my friend. Be water, my friend, my friend. Be water, my friend, my friend.